I'm talking about the word Reich, R-E-I-C-H. Most people probably will have heard the term Third Reich, which is the period of the National Socialist rule in Germany between 1933 and 1945, because of its impact on European and indeed global history. On the other hand, people might ask, if there was a Third Reich, what was the Second and the First Reich? To explain the German word Reich, one has to have a look at the translation. It's actually coming from the word Imperium, Imperium Romanum, the Roman Empire. So Reich is the translation of empire. The Third Reich actually would mean in translation the Third Empire. The three Reichs linked to Germany are the so-called Holy Roman Empire of the German nation, which existed from the 10th century till 1806. And the Second Reich is the Deutsches Reich of 1871, founded by Bismarck, more or less ending after the First World War in 1918. And the Third Reich is the rule of National Socialism in Germany, linked to Hitler from 1933 to 1945. There was what we call the translation of empire from the Roman Empire to Central Europe, which actually took place during the 8th century when Charles the Great, Charlemagne, became emperor of Christianity. Later on, in 962 actually, another emperor called Otto founded what then became the so-called Holy Roman Empire of the German nation. It was later called the German nation in the 15th century. And this Reich more or less existed until 1806 in Central Europe, in Germany, or what was then the so-called German states. There was no German nation state at this period. And then Napoleon conquered most of Europe and more or less destroyed every other entity and reorganized Central Europe. Then we have to move on to the idea of nationalism, which is the decisive idea, the driving force of most of the 19th century. This whole discussion and the national movement was finally solved through several wars in the 1860s, and then the Second Empire was founded in 1871. And the most well-known person for this, most famous person linked to this founding of the empire is, of course, Otto von Bismarck. Many people all over Europe in the 19th century saw the nation-state as the final stage of history. Once the nation-state was achieved, history settles down and people live on happily forever after. This was of course not the case, because nation-states tend to have tensions, and the struggle for power and the balance of power shaped the foreign relations of the Deutsches Reich until the First World War broke out and started in 1914. And as a result of the First World War, the Deutsches Reich was considerably reduced in the Treaty of Versailles, and the nation-state still existed as such, but on a very reduced scale. And many nationalists, of course, thought that this is a very unjust outcome. This led to political radicalism, and this was more or less the ground on which Hitler and others could build their radical theories about building a Third Reich. And again, they were of the opinion that the Third Reich, as soon as they would have founded it, would become something for eternity. That's why they also talked about the Third Reich as the 1,000-year Reich. There was never a plan for a Fourth Reich in serious terms. There were, of course, fears, particularly in 1990, when the unification came on the agenda. And at this time, particularly in Britain, there were caricatures which portrayed Germany as the march to the Fourth Reich and things like that. Most people in Germany in the 1980s and earlier, but also during the process of unification, were fully aware of the fact that other European nations were quite observing them very carefully what would happen to this new Germany as being the biggest economy in Europe and whether it would become aggressive again and things like that. But at this stage, Germany was fully integrated into the European Union and convinced that European integration and post-nationalistic orientation is the right way to the future, not to establish some sort of a Reich or a closed nation state, no forms of insularity.